has everything that a museum must have.
And this is a very good example of the ASEAN effort to improve the connection between the youth, between the people of ASEAN countries.
It was a very good exhibition. It compiles different artists from different countries, so it provides sort of different views of what the world and how people think about it.
I would like to congratulate the organizers of this event for a very interesting exhibition here in Jakarta.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from today. Welcome to the final Connect ASEAN Cultural Diplomacy Forum. My name is Benjamin Hamp, and I am the Project Director of Connect ASEAN, an arts program administered by the ASEAN Foundation and generously supported by the ASEAN Korea Cooperation Fund. This forum that you have joined today was launched in the lead up to this year's ASEAN Day to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the ASEAN Gallery, during which time we explored the history of ASEAN and through its collection of diplomatic gifts. Our second event was held in partnership with the Korea Foundation's Public Diplomacy Week, where arts professionals shared their experiences working between ASEAN nations and Korea. Our final session is held in partnership with Resiliart and the UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies and Sustainable Development, or Mondiacult, to be held in Mexico next year. Before we officially start the webinar today, and just to ensure we have a good experience, there's just a few house rules we'd like to go through. Please rename yourselves in the Zoom application according to your name and country. If you have a question for our speakers today, please write it in the chat, And if it's for a particular speaker, please make sure you put their name before the question. As this forum is chat-based, your microphones will be automatically muted and your video screen will be turned off. And remember, for those of you who are joining us and wish to have a certificate, please stay with us till the very end and we'll tell you how to get it. Now, unfortunately, we're having a bit of technical difficulty with our moderator's computer at the moment. So we are going to go straight to our opening remarks. And it is my very great pleasure to begin today's proceedings with Ms. Paolo Leoncini Bartoli. Ms. Bartoli is a historian who has spent over 18 years conducting research and analysis on the linkages between culture and development. Ms. Bartoli was appointed Director for Cultural Policies and Development in the culture sector at UNESCO in 2018. There she documented and harnessed culture's contribution across broad policy spectrums in the perspective of the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Now, please welcome me in joining, please join me in welcoming Ms. Bartoli to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, Ms. Bartoli.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's a true pleasure to be with all of you today and to represent UNESCO on behalf of Mr. Ernesto Tone, Assistant Director General for Culture at UNESCO, on the occasion of this KONNECT ASEAN Cultural Diplomacy Forum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank ASEAN for organizing this forum at a particularly critical juncture for culture and for culture diplomacy, during which culture is profiling itself as an uncontested engine and driver for international cooperation. And the fundamental dimension which unites societies and allows them to project themselves towards forging a more sustainable future. Over the past few years, countries have expressed a growing aspiration to reinvest policy dialogue on cultural policies and better anchor culture in sustainable development frameworks globally. UNESCO has been stepping up its efforts to reaffirm the value of culture in international cooperation towards achieving sustainable development for all at both the global and regional levels. Last year, UNESCO launched Resiliart, a global movement to support creative professionals and artists, which triggered more than 300 debates across the world, involving more than 110 countries. Furthermore, 2021 was declared by the UN General Assembly as the International Year of the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development, in order to uphold culture's transformative role to leave no one behind by leveraging the potential of the creative economy, which is one of the world's most rapidly growing sectors. And we wish to thank Indonesia for proposing such international year in the first place. The way in which countries invest for the strengthening of the cultural sector and position culture within post-pandemic recovery plans will have a long-lasting impact on our societies. UNESCO has also expanded its collaboration with regional or sub-regional IGOs and development banks to designing creative solutions targeting the specific demands and needs of different regions of the world and fostering regional cooperation. In this sense, ASEAN is a key partner to reinforce UNESCO's efforts across Asia and the Pacific. This is notably reflected in the ASEAN Strategic Plan for Culture and the Arts 2016-2025, as well as in its efforts to link digital transformation, innovation, and the creative economy, for example, through the consolidated strategy of the fourth industrial revolution for ASEAN. Adapting cultural and creative industries to the digital transformation is essential to foster human-centered development. UNESCO stands ready to support you all in these efforts, however we can. Looking forward, these reflections will pave the way towards the UNESCO World Conference on Cultural Policies, Mondiacult 2022, which was earlier mentioned by Ben, and which will take place in Mexico in September next year. The conference will provide new momentum for the global policy dialogue on culture and for sustainable development, to advance the free exchange of ideas and knowledge, and to harness cultural diplomacy. We hope that this forum will further give greater impetus to the global reflection on culture as a universal public good, promoting universal access to it through enhanced cooperation and more robust policies. I wish you all fruitful discussions during this forum, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bertoli, for setting the tone for today's forum and making sure we get off on the right foot in terms of collaboration and friendship across all nations. So thank you so much, Ms. Bertoli. Thank you for joining us. Now, I'm very pleased to announce our moderator for today, who's now back with us. So our forum will be moderated by Dr. Yang Mi Eng, the Executive Director of the ASEAN Foundation. Now, Dr. Yang has over 26 years experience in the public and private sectors with specializations in media, gaming, and the digital economy. Please join me in welcoming to the screen, or back to the screen, Dr. Yang Mi Eng.
Thank you, Ben. It was really challenging at this time. Our virtual world is really, a lot of challenges with technology. So thank you for having me back. I was struggling trying to get back. Here I am. Thank you.
I'm very pleased.
So I pray that today we will have a smooth session. So without further ado, I will go straight to our moderations for this today's sessions. So I would like to introduce our first presenter for national policies is Mr. Muhammad Abdul Damit. He is the Acting Director, Culture and Arts Division, Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, Brunei Darussalam. He has been in government service since 1994. And he has worked at national, regional, and international level, propagating culture, the arts, and Brunei Darussalam positions in the field of education, cultural, diplomacy, media heritage, and the arts. One thing I'm excited to introduce you before I invite him to the floor is he is the true artistic blood person. So I would like to invite to the floor Tuan Haji. Tuan Haji, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Dr. Tan. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. I would like to talk about the creative and cultural industries in Brunei Darussalam. Not to mention its impact to the creative economy, but this is all based on my research that I did for my another master's degree that I had last year. In fact, we look at the history. Cultural industry started very early in most of our countries, in most of our region, because we start talking about exchanges in trade during history when Chinese came here, when the Indians came here due to the diaspora and trade. There were exchanges, then there were archaeological evidence of such activities, and it rise to the different evidences such as villages named after certain craftsmen. There's a village called Kampong Pedaun. Daun is the leaf where people make leaves to use as the one on top of the house, so each kampong will have their own crafts. So it creates that the creative economy, the creative industry even started earlier than what we imagined. But then in Brunei, after the millennium, there are a few activities. I would like to highlight one because in 2012, we had this National Policy Forum on Creative Industries, which we invited different speakers from the experts from universities from around the world, from UK, from Australia, from Singapore, from Malaysia to discuss. And there's a recommendation, 4 different recommendations, which I will explain later. The Creative Industry Council, all the action plans, look at all the different markets and the infrastructure. But this research that I was talking about, and I did it in last year for my studies at the university. I talked to different groups of the practitioners, the industry players, and this is what they say. Some of them see that the art form is still at infancy stage, but some are at development stage. The only one who said they are now can be considered as an industry, which is traditional weaving. And we define the disciplines of creative arts for the creative industry as visual arts, performing arts, literary arts, textile arts, and media arts. The discussion at ASEAN level too of how to define creative industry, and we are still yet to arrive to certain conclusions of which area we're going to consider as part of the creative industry and as part of the creative economy too, because it is very big, quite a very big discipline. But then things that I would like to highlight is actually the issues that I found in my research. That number one, the importance of knowledge and skills, education system, qualification, capacity building, employability, and skills development is very important. In order to develop the economy, you should have that proper platform of knowledge and skills, giving proper education to them from the primary level up to tertiary level. Number two, being in the government service, being in the government sector, it is important that policies, legislations, and guidelines must be in place. And this is the role of the government to ensure that we have legislation in place to protect our artists, but at the same time to promote what they're doing. I see issues of, especially when talking about the creative economy in content development in Brunei. We have problems of not or demonetizing of videos of content being produced in Brunei. You cannot see the list in YouTube and in Google that states in Brunei you can actually get money from being content developer. The third one, the market. The market, I found out that if we are going to jump into this industry, is it for the love of the art? Because at the moment, this industry is still being paid low, especially in our region here, where artisans are paid not are receiving less monetary returns than those who are actually promoting the products. So royalties, an issue of low standards and branding at national and international level, we have to fight, though our products are even better than what is being offered by others. Number 4 is the industry economic environment, promotion and marketing, collection management system, box offices, demonetization, and digital money exchanges issues are the other areas that I found very important to us. And the fifth one is exposures and opportunities. when you are into this business, number one top priority now is for those people who has lots of subscribers and lots of followers. So when it comes to artists who are still going up, they have to fight with this part of the strata of the market. So which they need more exposure at local, at regional, and international, and they need to be given opportunities to network with others. Number 6, a very important one, is protection of intellectual property. One important issue is happening now is the issue of white labeling. You get products from other people, but you change the label because you can get cheaper products from other places where they are low, easier to make and cheaper to buy and cheaper to get those materials. So we need to teach our people, our artists, and even the market to ensure that issues of white labeling does not distort the market itself. Because to produce a really good, high quality material based on our local people, it takes them a longer time and even more expensive to actually create the products. And last but not least is on collective grouping associations. I think coming back together as a big group is an important thing. That's why ASEAN is a good example to promote a networking between artists and artisans and all those content developers and also those involved in this market. There must be the people that I did research with. They voice out concerns of unions and also associations which are not active, and the need for a creative industry body to actually coming together and support these activities, not only at national level, but also at regional level. Activities of creative industry in Brunei, there are lots of activities in Brunei that we did, but some of artists are actually making it up to Broadway, being artists in other big cities, but also at local, we also have some creating some activities for them. This is one of the cultural space that we did in Blight district for them to do some art, graffiti art in one of the in Syria, which is an oil town. Yearly we do have our National Day painting exhibition, big giant hashtags, and people are actually making money living through creative industry. But though it's a small market in Brunei, but we see the importance of them going out for the true collaborative work and coming together with others of similar type of business within ASEAN. So networking is also very important. Of course, traditional art still has the market here in Brunei. Also, the importance of creating this space and creating this area for them to participate, which is also very, very important. Local productions, some are actually, I like this part where we work together with other ASEAN member states. This is a joint production of a film, Marina 2 with Lao Film Commission, which is very, I should say, a successful one. We should actually give more areas of collaborative work together within this region. And obviously, we are working also with, like, for example, this is batik of the national weaving, which we also work with Indonesia in terms of dyes production and whatsoever, expanding the market to something else. But then also the importance of us to participate in other activities. See, the industry, when you look at this artists with 1.9 million views on the internet, but when it gets demonetized, there goes the problem, because it is important that big organizations like also big companies like Google, YouTube should also consider the different issues within each different markets. Though Brunei is a small market, when you see that the viewers is even more than our population. So I would like to conclude that it is important for us to be working together in a collaboration, because we cannot stand alone. We need to work with the regional bodies. We need to work with international bodies. We also need support from other organizations for us to pursue in realizing and tapping and the importance of this creative economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tuan Haji. And it is very important, like what Tuan Haji mentioned, monetizations, whether you get paid with your intellectual properties. So this is one of the biggest challenge right now. I think during this time, digitalizations, where content can be accessed through anywhere, free sometimes. So without further ado, let me invite our next speaker, Mr. Sion Sofirit. He is the Director General of Intangible Cultural Heritage and Cultural Development at the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts, Cambodia. And he is also the lecturer in Cambodian History and Arts History at Cambodia's Royal University of Fine Arts. So please join me in welcoming to the screen, Mr. Sion. The floor is yours, Mr. Sion.
Thank you very much. Thank you for wonderful introductions. And allow me to say, thank you very much to the organizer for having me to speak in this very important diplomacy forum. I thank my the previous speakers who providing the insight into the cultural and creative industry in Brunei. In this presentations of mine is just to give you an overview of the Cambodian government's efforts in order to promote Cambodia's cultural and creative industries. This is, I just show you the cultural resources that we have. We have the, like Angkor Wat temples and Angkor complex. We have monuments, ancient monuments that can be the driving force for the tourist attraction sites. And we also have other form of the intangible cultural heritage, like crafts and textiles and potteries and rattan weavings as the basket and stuff like that. I think it needs to be promoted locally and internationally to, the performances. We also have some sort of performance, and the new form of the contemporary art performance also take root and become popular in Cambodia. It was not like this in the past time, but now it's getting more popular. The new creations, the creativities of the artists, the contemporary arts and contemporary performances that is created, and it is attracted local audience and as well as the international audience as well. And it comes into the creative economies. I just take a quote from the definitions that we discussed earlier in the second ASEAN regional workshop on creative economy that taken place on the 19th November 2021. It is said that the ASEAN creative economy is added value emanating from human creativity based on heritage, culture, the arts, science, and inclusive development by ways of jobs, wealth, value creation. The ASEAN creative economy encompasses activity related to the production, consumption, distribution, and trade of intangible assets such as intellectual property rights and tangible assets such as goods and services. So it is the working definition. I think that the UN trade organizations also working on defining what is exactly creative economies, and now the ASEAN member states also take part in defining and in each of the ASEAN member states also have their personal approach in ways of looking at the creative economy as well. So for Cambodia, we have been thinking about what to promote the cultural products, cultural and creative industry. So the government have developed a national policy. It's called National Policy for Culture. We have our vision, which is the vision is the cultural policy will aim to ensure the conservation, preservation, and promotion of culture of the kingdom in its diversity, as well as to encourage creativity in the field of culture. And we also have a mission. A mission is because consider the core foundation for identity and the economy of the economy of the nation. The culture policy should create this policy should create conditions to preserve heritage and develop contemporary, vibrant cultural life. This cultural policy developed and approved by the Royal Government of Cambodia have two main goals. One is to safeguard, preserve, conservation of the great heritage of Cambodia, both tangible and intangible, because we have about 4,000, more than 4,000 archaeological sites dated to the prehistoric time and both historic and prehistoric. And then there are a lot of investment on restoration and preservation of those heritage, as well as intangible cultural heritage after the Khmer Rouge. If you're not aware, the Khmer Rouge is the regimes that kills its own people, lasted from 1975 to 1979, and about 3 million people died during the time. And intangible cultural heritage, many of them disappeared due to the lack of practice, the gaps during that period of time. So the efforts of the government is to promote the intangible cultural heritage that remains after the Khmer Rouge regime. At the same time, this cultural policy also addressed the promotion of the creativity, contemporary work, innovation through arts and creative industries. And this is very important that we have working so far with the private sectors, NGOs, and intergovernmental relations in order to promote that kind of work. So the government priorities is as I mentioned, one is the preservation, the use of cultural potential for economic development, promotion of cultural industry, support for cultural partnership, support for creating markets in the field of culture. Our previous speaker have mentioned about the creation of the market. I think that is very difficult, and especially during the time of pandemics, like some of the local artists or practitioners, cultural practitioners, sometimes they give up their professions because the lack of the markets and stuff like that. And I think that this is quite a big alert for the Ministry of Culture and Fine Art in order to find way to support them. We also have the education and training cooperation with other institutions and partners. I think the cooperation is also very important because we need to work together in order to find ways that help the local artists or local creators. I think this is very important. We need to work together. Like the government sometimes, officials sometimes, sit down and without going to the local level might not understand their issues. And I think Cambodia also try to talk to those stakeholders that involved in these promotions. Just to give you some ideas about the works that we have been done, or some work are not done yet, but this is the frame of the policies that Ministry of Culture and Fine Art is executing. Executing some is not able to do right now, but it might be in the future because of the lack of the human resources as well as the financial resources. So preservation and protection and management of cultural sites is one of the priorities. We need to strengthening the capacity of the officials in order against the illicit trafficking, training of administrator, police officers, soldiers, and raising awareness about the through the campaign. Dr. Ham just mentioned about the Cambodian have been working very hard in order to bring back some of the statues that have been looted from Cambodia. So those are the work that have been done. Inventory of the both tangible and intangible heritage is being conducted in order to fine-tune. By doing the intangible cultural heritage inventory, I think it's also very important to highlight the cultural resources, the know-hows of the people in the countries that the government agencies like my department generals need to further promote it in the future, or we have promoted at some point as well. So sustainable management of the archaeological site, I don't need to mention that. The capacity building of local staff for managing provincial cultural centers. I think cultural centers is very important as maybe part of, it is a part of the cultural promotions in which the cultural and creative industry is also aimed to be promoted in those centers as well. So the use of potential for economic developments, one of the priority actions is to promote film. We know that we have many resources that can be promoted for the filming in Cambodia. So we try to develop certain kind of policy in order to promote Cambodia as shooting destinations. We hope that in the futures there will be more and more film production companies will come to Cambodia. We also would like to promote the cultural product in the country and abroad, so that this is also bringing the money directly saying to the local producers. Promoting cultural industry, we also have worked on developing the National Fund for Creativity. It is not yet fully implemented, but the form has taken place. So these are the initiatives that we are doing, establishing a National Fund for Creativity to support the contemporary performing art, visual art, crafts, design, music, etc. And we also working on creating mechanism in support of crafts and designs. So, like we are working with the interministerials, because some of the work, it's not only work by the Ministry of Culture and Fine Arts where I am working right now, but we need to do the interministerial work. Sometimes it is tough, to be honest. Sometimes it's not running smoothly because, sometimes because of the misunderstanding, sometimes because of the workload itself. So this is very difficult, but we are developing some sort of inter-ministerial task force so that we can support the craft and designs in this case. We try to defining organizational and legal format. I think our previous speaker have raised the issues of legislations in order to promote cultural industries. I think Cambodian is a little bit behind of that. We need to work with all stakeholders. Maybe we need to study more from our counterparts of ASEAN member states, so that we can learn how to properly develop our legislation, appropriate legislation in the modern time. Modern time meaning during the pandemic, how can we help the local and how can we promote cultural and creative industries? We are doing the defining the task, coordinating, advocacy, promoting education, training, awareness raising. And I think all of those is very important. And we also in the process of introducing the national label. I think the national label is very important, so that to promote the local products and also to raise awareness among the international markets and also the populations to know about the.
Sorry, I have to remind you. You have to wrap it up.
Okay.
You have it's over time. Huh? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. So we are establishing the national award for that, and this is just to give you. We are developing the art forum coordinating mechanism, so that these are the ways that we can support. We are developing the art business forum. This is yet implemented. We are also thinking about doing the art and media forum so that we can help the promoting the products and also the communication among the stakeholders. And the markets are our previous speaker, very similar issues on the markets for the local communities. So basically, right now, Cambodian is trying. What Cambodian is trying to do is trying to promote all the existing and promote more creativities in the field of culture and creativity in Cambodia. So we are working among the ASEAN member states is to develop ASEAN Center for Cultural and Creative Industries. We hope that when this center is approved and adopted by all the ASEAN member states, I think we can share, we can develop, we can work together with all of our stakeholders to promote cultural and creative industry in Cambodia and among ASEAN and abroad and in the world as well. So I thank you very much for your attention. I think it makes I might have some contribution to this work by showing the case and efforts by the royal government of Cambodia. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Dr. Jang.
Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you, Your Excellency, for the very good sharing. I'm very excited to see Cambodia is doing so much to promote your creative economy. Yeah? So I do hope that there will be more collaboration in the future in the regional level. So let's discuss about this after all the presentation finish. So one thing I would like to remind all the participants, audience, to put your questions. You can start to post your question at the message box, because we have 2 more presentations to follow after this, and then after that we will have a Q&A session for discussion. So without further ado, our next speaker, our third speaker, will be Mr. Muhammad Nail Himam. He is the Deputy Chairman for Digital Economy and Creative Products in the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy, Indonesia. So prior to working at the ministry, Mr. Himam was the Director for ICT Infrastructure at the Indonesian Agency for Creative Economy, or we call it BERCRAF. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Himam to the screen. The floor is yours, Mr. Himam.
Thank you, Madam Yang Miang. Good afternoon, everyone. It's glad to be here to probably share with you the Indonesian creative economy update for now. Let me share my presentation. So I just go directly. Okay, I will talk about the Indonesian creative economy update for all of us here at the event. The creative economy is considered to be one of the sectors that grows very fast and is able to contribute to the economy and employment, and as well as export goods and goods and services. And our president has mentioned that this creative economy era, the creative economy should be the backbone for the Indonesian national economy. He mentioned this in 2015. And in 2019, we in Indonesia enacted a law in creative economy. So it's called the Law of Creative Economy. And in it, we define a creative economy as the materialization or emanation of added values from intellectual property born of the human creativity based on science, culture, and technology. So based on these 3 things that we consider our creative economy. And for now, we do have 17 subsectors of creative economy, from application, computer application, digital application, and then games, architecture, interior design, visual communication design, product design, fashion, film, animation and video, photography, craft, culinary, music, publishing, advertisement, performing arts, fine art, and as well as the content of television and radio. And as our president has mentioned before, we think that we are the backbone of the national economy. So the contribution to the national GDP in every annually increase. So in 2015 is 852 trillion rupiah, which is roughly around 60 billion dollars. And in 2019, before the pandemic, it was 1,200 trillion rupiah, or roughly around 80 billion US dollar. And for the labor, the worker and the creative economy, we do have around 16 million or 17 million, close to 17 million workers that works in the creative economy sectors. Nationally, there is around 100 million labor force. And this is also the workforce is also increasing every year. And before the pandemic, again, from the 16 million in 2015, it was around 19 million in 2019. So it was increasing. But again, due to the COVID pandemic, of course, we did see a little bit of decrease in the number of the workforce. If we talk about the creative economy, of course, we need to talk about the ecosystem of itself. We consider the creative economy. Our creative economy has the most important thing here in creative economy, of course, the talent itself in the creative as well in the digital area, and other asset that we have, and other potential asset that we have is, of course, in our culture. We are rich in culture. At this point, we do have around 700 languages in Indonesia. So by itself, it's basically we can use those as capital, as cultural capital for developing a lot of creative products. For example, movies, books, music, songs, and so on, as well as, of course, arts. And we do need to have a products. Creative products, of course, can be divided into either goods as well as services. But in this area of digital, we do have physical goods, and as well as digital goods. And as our law has mentioned, as defined, the most important thing here for creative products is, of course, the underlying assets, which is intellectual property of the product itself. In terms of funding, we do not have, beside the conventional funding or a source of fund, we do also start on embarking to consider IP financing. And this is also one of the, we are drafting regulation on this IP financing as one of the mandate that given in our creative economy law. Of course, all the creative economy, especially in the digital area or digital subsectors, we do need infrastructure as well as technology. So we know now that a lot of the technology that we are having right now can be used to enhance to our creative products. For example, like right now, it is very it's everywhere with regard to blockchain technology. If we heard about the NFT, for example, non-fungible token, which is based on the blockchain technology. Before we know this blockchain as a cryptocurrency for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on. But now I think blockchain is a technology that will enable Internet of Values in the sense that any digital product can now have values within. And we do need to have policy and regulation. Beside our creative economy law, we do also have in digital area. We do have information and transaction, electronic information and transaction law. We do also have a tourism law because I'm in the tourism ministry as well, and other government regulation as other government regulations. And in terms of market, of course, creative economy has to have market as well. Usually in terms of conventional landscape, we do have domestic and global, but now with digital, we do have offline market as well as online market. And with online market, of course, we don't have any more barrier in terms of times and space barrier in that sense. So this is the ecosystem that we are trying to build based on the policy and the regulation that we have. And this is just an example of one of our program. This is an end-to-end program in terms of building not just the talent itself, but also the ecosystem for showcasing as well as trying to market the product. This is specifically for the digital product for application and games. We have what we call Baparekraf Developer Day. This is where an event where a lot of would-be developer in the digital area can sit together and share their knowledge, share their skills to other newbie or would-be developers. And we do also have a Baparekraf Digital Talent. This is we are giving a scholarship or a certification program for some mobile developers or web developers. And if someone want to become startups, they can join our backup program. This is Baparekraf for startup to create a startup, pre-startup to incubation as well as acceleration of the program. We do have also bantuan pemerintah. This is like giving the stimulant for in the form of capital or other facilitation for our creative endeavors. If people have endeavors, then they can apply for this program and get the funding as well as other facilitations. And Baparekraf Game Prime, this is basically an event for showcasing our local game products to our audience, local audience, so that they know that we do have good games products in Indonesia itself. And we also participate in some of the international event for creative economy, such as South by Southwest, Gamescom. This is for games, and Games KONNECT in America. So this is some of the program that we do have, and we try to expand this program, of course, to a much bigger audience. But since last year, we did a lot of this through virtual participation or virtual event. I think that's it. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you. I'll return it to Mr. Yang Meng. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Welcome back again. And that is a very interesting level of progress in Indonesia creative economy. It has actually covered blockchain also, and also into games and new media. So this is really, you can see a diversification in each country's creative economy are very different. So I would like to actually invite our final speaker of today, who is the Congressman Christopher Vera Perez Venecia, a proud millennial with a background in theater arts and communications, having started 2 theater companies in the Philippines. So at present, he is a representative in the lower house of the Congress of the Philippines, sitting as the deputy majority leader. He is also the chairman of the Special Committee on the Creative Industry and Performing Arts. So, of course, he has so many journals, and articles that he have written so far in the varieties of sectors in the industry. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming to the screen Mr. Vera Perez de Venecia. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Yang, and hello to everyone. Greetings and creativity, mabuhay from the Philippines. It is my pleasure to speak before this gathering of creative minds and movers from all around the region. My name is Toff de Venecia. I am a member of the Philippine House of Representatives, the lower chamber of our country's bicameral legislature, representing the 4th District of Pangasinan, which is a province northwest of the archipelago. I'm also currently the chairperson of the Special Committee on Creative Industry and the Performing Arts, which was a committee that was just created by Congress last October 2020 as part of a recent wave of policy shifts for developing the Philippine creative industries. It's my honor to share some updates about our policies that we have been pursuing for the past year and a half. COVID shocked us all. Up to now, the world continues to struggle in dealing with the virus, especially in light of the new Omicron variant. However, if there was any silver lining that has come about with this unprecedented crisis, it saw for the first time the creative industries clamoring to be heard, coalescing, and coming together as one sector to be reckoned with. With lockdowns in place, all the unspent energy previously expended on creative pursuits out of our homes were funneled into laptop screens and virtual meetings. Talking about a way forward for an industry in crisis, but has very much the potential of becoming the next great economic driver, not just for our country, but for the world. On the side of the private sector, this has led to the coming together of at least 3 big industries in the Philippines: audiovisual media, fashion, and live events, which came in the form of 3 huge national coalitions of creative enterprises and workers, namely the Interguild Alliance for Film, the Philippine Fashion Coalition, and the National Live Events Coalition of the Philippines. They, together with other pre-existing business support organizations and creative workers associations, also further coalesced into forming the Creative Industries Philippines beginning June of this year. In the executive branch of the Philippine government, we are also seeing partnerships and closer collaborations between and among government agencies and bureaus who have common mandates that can support the Philippine creative industries. At present, there is no creative industry government agency, but with the pending passage of the Creative Industries Bill, then there will finally be a council that will coordinate all of the different kinds of programs and support that can benefit our creative sector. In the lower house, the Arts and Culture and Creative Industries Block of the 18th Congress, or fondly known as ACHIB or ACCIB, was founded in 2019, and I was one of the 14 founding members. Since the pandemic, our block of legislators has accelerated to over 60 members, which includes our very own Speaker of the House of Representatives, Lord Alan Velasco. Currently, we are in the thick of our budget deliberations, and we have to ensure that the different government agencies that provide support to our creative industries will get the necessary budget that they need to be able to implement such programs and forms of support. The coming together of all these key groups and individuals did not happen for the sake of just coalescing. What has made this occurrence truly significant is that all of these are leading to official discussions towards the creation of policies for the creative sector. Just this afternoon, we actually just completed our 3-part hearings on the issues surrounding the publishing and print media sector. And certainly there are a lot of policies that need to be put in place to be able to develop this sector. As of today, a number of major pieces of legislation have been approved on final reading in the lower house and are pending approval in the upper house. Programs in the executive department are already being funded And almost on a daily basis, events, forums, webinars, and other productive engagements are being conducted by various private sector groups and stakeholders. As a creative practitioner myself, having worked in the publishing industry for more than a decade and later having founded two theater companies in the Philippines, I would dare say that now is a great time, if not the best time, to be a creative in the Philippines. On the side of legislation and policymaking, I'd like to mention at least three that have moved significantly forward in our country's lawmaking process. And although there are more in the mill, I believe that these three represent the main aspects of creative and cultural policies that we are trying to address. 3 months ago, the lower house passed on third and final reading the proposed Philippine Creative Industries Development Act. It sets forth a unifying framework to develop our traditionally siloed Philippine creative industries. It identifies what these industries are first and foremost, breaking down the vast creative industries into 9 developmental domains as prescribed by UNCTAD. The bill also establishes a development plan that the government's main agencies in partnership with the private sector would craft, setting forth roadmaps and key results areas and key performance indicators along various sectors. The proposed measure also creates a coordinating body that would implement this plan, and this would be the Philippine Creative Industries Development Council. From the title, it will be gleaned that this is an industry-focused piece of legislation. However, understanding the role that creative workers play in the sector, there also needs to be additional protection for these individuals, as was shared by some of our speakers earlier. This is where the Freelance Workers Protection Act comes in. When passed into law, the measure will require written contracts in every working arrangement between a freelancer and a hiring party. The contract must, of course, be signed by all parties involved and must contain minimum clauses that the measure enumerates. The freelance bill also proposes certain premiums for night shift work as well as those rendered under riskier conditions. The bill also seeks to help freelancers establish themselves by helping them get into the formal economy. But over and above the specific measures, we also envision the freelance bill to usher in a snowball effect towards the recognition of freelancing as a unique way of making a living, which comes with its special and unique issues and concerns. These two bills, the Creative Industry Development Bill and the Freelance Bill, work hand in hand to elevate creative businesses and creative work, not only by generating jobs, opportunities, and other forms of economic activity, but also by raising the dignity of creatives and other freelancers as workers and as human beings. We're also actively pushing for the enactment of cultural policies. We recently passed a mandatory cultural mapping bill, which mandates local government units in the Philippines to conduct a cultural mapping program to be able to take stock of their cultural and creative assets while assigning the different national government agencies to aid the said local governments in this endeavor. Throughout our consultations over the past year and a half, we legislators are learning more and more about creative industries and cultural policies. Specifically, we take after what Charles Landry has famously said, and I quote, "Creativity is the supreme renewable resource, and heritage is a non-renewable resource. Hence, we are inclined to set up, on the one hand, cultural policies that continuously safeguard our past, and on the other, developmental measures that ensure our country's creative productivity towards innovating for the future." It goes without saying that these two streams of policymaking must be harmonized at all times. I dare say that ASEAN is the next big player in the creative industries, with a global market for creative goods increasing considerably from $436 billion in 2002 to $964 billion in 2015. ASEAN has not been far behind. Countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Brunei have been increasingly promoting trade in creative goods and services as seen in the 2018 UNCTAD report. The Philippines' creative economy also features $3.2 billion in the export of creative services, composed mainly of software and IT, animation, game development, digital marketing, and design services, making us actually number one in the ASEAN region. But we are only number 5 in terms of the export of our creative goods due to a host of many reasons that we are starting to address through these congressional hearings and dialogues that we've been having with the private sector. To expand my statement earlier, I think now is the best time to be a creative in ASEAN. I would like to thank the ASEAN Foundation for allowing me to share our experiences from the Philippines. I look forward to meeting you all in person when the pandemic is over. And as we always say in our advocacies, the future is creative and the future is ASEAN. I invite everyone to please follow us on our Instagram account. That's at ACCIBPH or AchievePH, so that you can get to know all of the bills that we've been filing in support of the creative industries. There are at least 4 to 5 pieces of legislation that needs to be filed per sector because it's plagued with so many different problems that usually are under the radar because they are not top of mind of policymakers. But having realized the potential of the creative economy to contribute to our national development, then these issues need to be addressed. Everything from human resource development, education, to the price of raw materials and its availability, to marketing and support, being able to capitalize on digital and the digital frontier and the 4IR and so many others. So we look forward to being able to gain substantial and significant strides in developing the creative sector. Thank you so much. Good afternoon and maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Christopher, which is a very good sharing, especially when it comes to bill passing. I think Philippines is the champion in ASEAN because you have all this been taken care, freelance, Creative Industry Act, and then cultural mapping. This is really, really impressive. So I and also for the benefit of all here, I think Philippines is one of the most creative freelancers heaven, and gig economy is driven by Philippines for ASEAN level. So I think this is a good start and also could actually serve as a role model also to other country AMS industry. So we have come to the 4 sessions presentations. I hope that you have actually gain some information and knowledge on the creative economy in ASEAN. So without further ado, we have reached the Q&A session. So this is a very exciting session. And before we start our Q&A session, I would like to invite Mr. Jonathan Tan. Jonathan Tan Gitiong is the Head of Culture and Information Division, Sustainable Development Directorate, ASEAN Secretariat. So before we start the discussions, let me give a little bit of a briefing on how you can actually proceed with this session. For the panelists or speakers, you can always raise your hand if you want to answer the questions, or I will actually invite you when we post the questions. So feel free to do that, raise it, and I'll give the floor to you. And I would like to start the questions. First question is to how do we build an enabling environment for the creative economy to flourish and to ensure that no one is left behind. I think this is the motto and missions of ASEAN. No one is left behind. So what are the best practices at the national level in promoting creative industry that could be co-opted and elevated for regional cooperation? Means that this is the platform for you to share your best practice and where you think that it can actually be put and co-opted in the regional level. So perhaps I can go for the first speaker of today is Brunei, Tuan Haji. Yeah, would you like to say something about this? Yeah.
Thank you. I always go back to the model that I found out in my research, that the importance of 3 things. Number 1, the players. We have to develop the players. Developing the players is through skills and knowledge. Number 2 is developing the field, the area which they are doing which is supported by the industries that is supporting them. Say, for example, we are developing filmmakers in Brunei. We have to develop, like in Brunei, we prepared some programs for them under the Authority for Info Communication Technology. There are some grants for them if they wish to do film and they wish to dwell further into getting support from the government, in also giving them permission to use certain venues for their film shooting, shooting venues. But if we go back to the basic of giving knowledge and skills, it's actually by providing them education. We have been putting arts, business, arts, and technology in our education system since the SPN, the System Pendidikan Negara 21, like 15, 20 years ago. So by having it in the system, we ensure that there's some people, some more students, be given multiple pathways to education, and also helping creating choices for them if they go for certain careers in the future. Number two, I looked at that model of domain. The domain is actually the industry itself, the place itself, how they support each other. So government is in charge of policy and legislation. The market is in charge of providing all the support in terms of developing the exchange of goods and services. But actually the third one is our role in engaging other parties, other areas, other businesses, and also in regional and international avenue. So it's some sort of interlinkages between all three, and I agree that it is important for the engagement of stakeholders, multiple stakeholders engagement in actually developing and giving these industry players an avenue for them to participate and move forward.
Yeah, thank you, Tuan Haji. It's a very good point. I mean, human resource is actually the main key components in the industry. Without artistic people, without the skilled people, I think you will be left behind. Nothing can be done. Nothing good can be created, actually. So maybe I'll pass the floor also to Indonesia, Pak Neil, to give some points.
Well, I think similar of Pak Haji was saying, we need to take care, from our point of view, we need to take care and we need to develop the ecosystem itself, because through the ecosystem, of course, when it can play in harmony, for example, the creative industry will flourish, of course. We do not have to have the people itself. We do not have capital in culture as our capital. We do need to have a regulation, policy and regulation that support that market, and so on. So I think that's one of the key point that we need to pursue. And of course, we do not have the law itself. So we have the basic foundation of creating programs now, national program, as well as regional and local program for our creative economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I saw that Your Excellency, Mr. Sion is back. Yeah, Mr. Sion, I will pass the floor for your comment.
Thank you. And I think for Cambodia, we need to develop some kind of legal framework and also to work closely with the stakeholders. And I think the proposal that Cambodian is posing is not only to help the Cambodian people or Cambodian creators themselves, but also, you know, like I know that at the grassroots level, the one that is creators, they might not have the opportunities to step up, to move forward. And I think this is that is one of the reasons why that Cambodian is trying to push not only for Cambodians but also for the ASEAN, the one that do not have their voice, like to be heard, or creation to be seen or to be consumed by other stakeholders. And I think Cambodia is strongly request that the support from all other like AMS in these promotions. And I think these forums I learned quite a lot, especially from His Excellency, the representative from the Philippines, that we're providing, like wide a range of, like difficulty challenges, especially in terms of how to develop the legal framework for the cultural and creative industry to strive. And I think difficulties in each country have its own, challenges that have to promote this in regionally and locally. So I think all of this, I thank you for every speakers for their wonderful insight into this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sion. Actually, you are very right. I can see that everyone here has unique preposition. I do hope that, after this, we can all work together, and benefit from each other. Like, for instance, Mr. Sion, Cambodia side, you have so beautiful site for filming. And then so I'm sure that Thailand also have it. I think Thailand also have a very matured filming on location, shoot in locations, benefits and incentive. So I think that is, we can learn from each other also after this. But being a chair for this coming year, I hope that Cambodia, can drive, Somka can drive this initiative for the collaboration to make it happen. So I think, I would also like to invite Christopher to give your points on the first question. Thank you.
Yeah, so there are 3 points that I want to bring up. The first is, when we were developing the creative industry bill, it was really geared towards creative firms and businesses, but the critical mass of the creative industries is really the labor sector, like the workers. And so they were really pushing for the resolution of all these welfare issues that have been plaguing the freelance sector for decades. And so we had to include in the bill, and we were happy to do so, a provision creating a workers' welfare standing committee, which is attached to the Creative Industry Development Council. So while ad hoc committees can be formed to discuss issues like marketing or research and development or digitalization, it's always important that you have a mechanism by which you can hear out the concerns of the creative freelancers, whether they're not being paid on time, whether they're not being paid equitably based on the services that they are rendering, or whether their intellectual property is not being respected or valued. So for me, it's important, if you want to be inclusive and that for nobody to get left behind, that you are able to really address the concerns of the workers. Second, this is a really more industry specific, but we also filed a bill for audiovisual tourism incentives. And we were basically working with some of the data that we gathered from our tourism department that 8 out of 10 tourists are influenced by the kind of content that they consume prior to going to a specific country. So they are influenced by films that they watch, vlogs, television shows. So we are currently deliberating on a policy that will basically provide those incentives to content creators, with the end view, of course, of spurring domestic and inbound tourism in the country, such as, for example, with Crazy Rich Asians being shot in Singapore, or in Angkor Wat, I think they shot Tomb Raider there, and there is a close linkage and synergy between tourism and the creative economy. And I think the third point I want to make is there has to be active participation of the private sector in all these discussions. And that's why in the council that we are creating through the passage of the Philippine Creative Industry Bill, there are 9 seats in the council for government and another 9 seats for the private sector. So they're basically equal. and they are co-chaired by both the private sector and government, because government is really just there to provide an enabling environment. But ultimately, it's the private sector who has to be calling the shots. And right now, we have funded a lot of industry development roadmaps for each of those creative industries within the framework. We've identified around 50 creative industries, so it's a lot. But each industry should have its own roadmap in the short, medium, and long term, so that there is sort of like a direction that they are going, as opposed to piecemeal development that doesn't really ladder up to anything significant. And the private sector needs to be very much involved in these discussions so as to ensure inclusivity. And so we're looking forward to all these programs being completed and having a clearer picture of the creative economy and its growth trajectory in the Philippines.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Christopher. I think for Philippines, definitely it is a very different landscape because I think Philippines got a lot of work for hire industry. I mean, you get FDI in, and then you open like a work for hire factory producing many skilled people to do the work in games and animation and new media. So I think there is a little bit different, slightly different from other states, some of the other states. But again, human resource is the key to drive FDI, from the experience. So I do hope that in future, this kind of skill sets can be exchanged within the AMS to benefit. That means inclusive means some of the different AMS have different level, maybe can be brought up, into the same level. And the marketing side, business side, I think Singapore is also quite good in selling their products and services. How good are you in selling? I think the Korean side is a learning, big learning model for us also, how to follow the Korean way of promoting their cultural and arts sectors to the whole world. So I think I would like to invite Jonathan. Jonathan, sorry for keeping you at the last for the first question. Can you give some opinions of yours?
Yeah, thanks very much, Dr. Yang. And I've been listening very intently to the panel discussion. I think just very quickly, I would like to say that I think where at the regional level, the discussions on the promotion and development of the creative economy are surely underway and is gaining traction. I think in part, as we know, over the last 2 years itself, the pre-existing trend of digital transformation due to the onset of has accelerated due to the onset of the pandemic. And this has given a leverage, especially for the creative sector, and especially for those who are resourced and have the expertise to actually pivot towards greater, a creative digital economy. But unfortunately, of course, there are those who have been left behind as well. And therefore, I think that going forward is really looking at many other aspects. I think aspects that I think our panel discussants have also brought up, especially in terms of how you level up the skills training as well as career employment opportunities for the creative and cultural workers, given that many of them certainly have their livelihoods and life severely impacted due to the pandemic. But the silver lining in the clouds is that, as I think some reports have invariably put it, that when it comes to the creative economy, it may account up to 10% of the global GDP by 2030. So this, in a way, represents, short of saying it as a gold rush, but it's a great potential for the global community and especially for ASEAN as well. And I think one last point I want to make here is that I think where ASEAN is concerned, what we have here is a very strong underlying fundamental. And that underlying fundamental is that the uniqueness and the cultural diversity of our region, as what our part from Indonesia has mentioned, like in Indonesia alone, you have more than 700 languages. And I think these are the cultural assets that we can amplify and then, bring that kind of creative goods and services to the region as well as beyond this region as well. And I think one last point I want to make here is that given that this is a forum that we organize with our long-standing partner, ROK, certainly there's also much that we can do in working with long-standing partners like ROK, given that ROK, as we all know, is second to none in terms of being a soft power, arguably in this part of the world, from K-pops to everything else. And there's very much more that we can learn from them and think about how we can create an ASEAN wave. And to think about the question about whether an ASEAN wave is a possibility, riding on the Hallyu wave, the K wave. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Actually, Jonathan, you pointed out something very, very critical, is to learn from our neighbor, our partners today. This program is actually funded and supported by Korean government. So imagine this time, at this pandemic time, it was just reported that Korean, most of the industry is going downwards, except for the soft power, the creative digital economy, is climbing up and contributed the highest to their GDP. So I think the potential definitely is there for ASEAN, because it's a melting pot. It is so rich in culture. Everybody has something to show. Everybody has something to offer on the table. So it just needs some efforts, because in terms of government support here is very crucial. Since we have all the government here and also have some young people, young ideas, it is a very good platform for collaborations, and I see the value. So I will want to pose the second question, which needs your brief inputs, because of the time, we have a very short time. It's during this pandemic time, creative industry is the most affected industry, apart from tourism and all that. So in your view, what can we do to build back strong by using creative power and soft power? So we go for our first speaker again, Tuan Haji, for your view on this.
Thank you. As Jonathan rightly said, we have examples of how soft power is beginning to dominate the world, and how culture in terms of assimilation, in terms of innovation, and in terms of acceptance to other cultures. There's one research which was looking at cultural intelligence, how intelligent we are in different cultural settings. So it is important now for us to come back from the pandemic. As schools are closed, borders are closed, or the usual traditional economic activities are closed, it is important that culture is still there, because for me, for my own personal theory, that culture is something that you really practice, and what we practice every day is now things including the contents that we're getting from the digital world. Everybody knows mukbang at the moment now. So we try to promote the food that you eat. Mukbang is always the culture that we're looking at now. So we see the rise of K-pop, and also the importance of us in actually getting such information easily now. So I see there is a potential, and even the statistics will say that culture, the arts, is the new way, is the new diplomacy, is the new way for us to come back from the collapse of our economy due to all the sanctions and all the cancellations of our activities in the usual traditional economic activities.
Thank you, Tuan Haji. I think you're very right. We can use this platform, digital platform, now to promote arts and culture to the world. So I think maybe later, creative economic content, bilateral trades, can be implemented, among the AMS to purchase each other's content, so that you can consume has increased consumptions in the regional level. Okay, I think that I will jump a little bit queue because Neil has something engagement. So Neil, maybe you can give your view in this point.
Yes, again, culture is an asset. Of course, this is the most important asset in the creative economy, but the other assets, I think, is the IP itself, intellectual property. Because without it, then the creative products would not have values for its creators. So that's also, I think, a way if we can work together. Because some of the ASEAN member states probably has more advanced in the creative in the IP-based products, IP-based monetization, protection, and so on. So I think this is one way that we can collaborate. We can learn. Indonesian can learn from other countries, for example, like from Singapore or from the Philippines or from the Malaysia in this case. Yeah. I think that's for us is one of the most important.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. You pointed out you nail in very important points, which is monetization of IP. Because in Korea they do a lot of one source multi-usage. They call it OSMO model. Means in one IP you can break it into many things like products, merchandising, branding. So I think that is very important. So perhaps if we try and see whether we can organize this in our next phase of our project of Connect ASEAN to learn from each other how to monetize the IP. I think Korea is very good in this. So I think I will also invite Cambodia now, Mr. Sion, to give your points.
I cannot agree more with our previous speakers just mentioned. Important. I see one of the examples that Indonesia just organized the business forums that they try to promote. Like they have the online catalog about the cultural products of ASEAN countries. I think, like in line with you, Dr. Yang, says that like there might be bilateral agreements or something like that. I think this is very important. To speak specifically for Cambodia, I think this is the Cambodia is need to invest much more on the infrastructures itself, especially in terms of technologies and internet and stuff like that. Because like you see, in order to do the soft whatever you called it in the internet marketing and stuff like that, I think we need the proper infrastructures that can channel all the products that can be promoted online. So I think this is what our previous speaker says. I think that is a very good ideas that can be implemented in Cambodia, and I think Cambodian government itself have to invest much more on the telecommunication infrastructures so that they can properly promote that online after pandemics.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Sion. I think infrastructure is key. Yeah, it is the key. Infrastructure. Without infrastructure, you can't transmit your content to the world. So it's a window of us to the world. May I ask if Neil, would you like to leave first, because I know that you are rushing. We won't keep you too long.
Dr. Yang, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil. Pak Neil. We see you in other forum. Thank you. Take care. Yeah. So now I will get to Christopher. Christopher, would like to hear from you.
Yeah. So on the question of Build Back Better, I think this is something that we've been encountering with a recent program that we launched, which is the Philippine Creative Cities Network. It's sort of like a local counterpart to the UNESCO Creative Cities, because applying for that, every country can only field 2 applications, and it happens every 2 years. And we didn't want to wait until our cities were UNESCO Creative Cities before they could start working on creative strategies for their socioeconomic agenda. So something that we have been considering in these deliberations is, how do we convince local chief executives and mayors to be able to make investments in creativity, in so far as spatial or with regards to place, social or with regards to people, and economic, which is with regards to their local economy. So how can we convince them to employ these creative strategies so that they would be able to help the creatives, and in turn the creatives can help them? And what we've found is that, since we are in the process of trying to build back better and imagining a post-pandemic world, we do imagine our cities being a little bit more creative and employing strategies such as, for example, in the visual art space, what are the benefits of having large-scale murals in your city, or public sculptures or public art? Or in terms of film, what are the benefits of having regional film commissions that will compete against one another in attracting film companies to shoot in their locality, knowing the number of jobs, the number of revenue that this will infuse into a city? What are the benefits of creating music festivals, and how many jobs can that create, both on the creative side and also on the non-creative side, meaning all those people who are, tearing tickets or building sets or whatever it is. So I think the more progressive cities in our country, like Baguio and Cebu, for example, which are our two UNESCO creative cities for craft and folk art and design, have already realize this for themselves, that there's value in making investments in their local creative economy. But others need a little bit more convincing. And that's what we're trying to sort of enjoin them to do. Because again, I have to go back to what I said in my statement earlier, that the future is creative. There's so much to be gained and so much to be harnessed by making these strategic investments the way South Korea did back in 1997 during the time of Kim Dae-jung. It is a way forward for a country in crisis. And we just have to realize that in crisis, there's opportunity.
Yeah. That's why I really agree with Christopher. It's not dark and totally unable to do anything. This is the window for us to recreate, be innovative. Since we are creative people, it should be innovative enough to survive and do something differently. So I think one thing challenging about the policymaker and also funding coming, people just always want to see money. What is the value in money form? So this is a very challenging thing, because government all over AMS, when they want to ask for funding, or from the government budgets, they have to always show on in the spreadsheet, balance sheet, what is the creative value. So some value cannot be counted by money. So there are this challenge, and I think Cambodia will face this challenge because yours is arts and heritage. So if people doesn't come to your site, how are you going to earn money? You're not going to sell tickets now. So this is a challenge that we have to really maybe have a workshop after this to help each other figure out how to build back strong. So I will go to Jonathan. Jonathan?
Thank you very much, Dr. Yang. So just very briefly, I think when it comes to a question about building back better, I think what comes to my mind is that, to ask myself that question, what is it that we want to build back better? I think a lot of times we are talking about dollars and cents, building back the economy and all that, which is, I think, important certainly. But where the role of the creative economy is concerned, we know that it has the potential to provide curative and creative benefits, right, to uplift the quality of lives of the people. And I think that is a part that we hope to see as well. I think at the regional level that building back better through the role of the creative economy is really about building a world of greater tolerance, greater intercultural understanding as well.
Yeah,
and I think that, just one last point here is that we have embedded these contributions of the role of the creative economy in the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, which really is a concerted effort by ASEAN to look at post-pandemic economic recovery. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. It's very well said. Not everything is measured by money only. So there are definitely some spin-off from this creative economy, more than money, beyond money, identity, So, okay, because of the time, so I will go one round with all the speakers for you to say your last closing remark. So I go for Tuan Haji again. Tuan Haji.
Thank you. At regional level, I think the discussion with Korean side is helping us in developing further where we're going with cultural industries. I have to talk from the cultural industry side, not from the cultural economy, because when I talk about the economy, will become a bigger platform for us to discuss. But as far as Brunei Darussalam is concerned, I think we should have more exchanges between ASEAN and also ASEAN and our dialogue partners. And in this case, for Korea, we already have 4 different types of exchanges in film, in dance. Coming soon is the visual arts. And the next one is, there's another one which I forgot. There are four exchanges now. Though at political level, we need to discuss it further, but I'm looking at how our grassroots practitioners, our industry players are gaining benefits from it. So we need to get this discussion going on and get more participation from more people and with those who are actually there in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would like to invite Mr. Sion to give your last statement. Your mic is off, Mr. Sion. Your mic. Yeah.
I think more collaboration works need to be done. Even between the AMS or between ASEAN member states with other countries, and as well as among the government agencies and the grassroots, the practitioners, like our previous speaker just mentioned. I think more collaboration, experience sharing, the best practice, all of this, I think it will benefit to those who the real practitioners. And then I cannot agree more with you, Dr. Yang, that don't think money, of course, is very important, but sometimes the values of that, it is beyond, the creativity is beyond just only the money. My professor told me that what are you going to do with your work at the Ministry of Culture? And then he said that first you have to do is prioritize culture. Culture first, money is later, or you have to prioritize culture and creativity. I think this is the most important.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you
so lucky to have a leader that understands you. Huh? That is a very, very good leader. Huh? So I would like to invite Indonesia, not Daniel. So Philippines, Christopher, to say your last statement.
So again, thank you for having me. I look forward to more cooperation between the ASEAN member states and also those outside of ASEAN. I think we need to be able to include a discussion on creative industries in higher level meetings among countries, because we all have to collectively sort of envision like how much share of the global economy do we want the ASEAN creative industries to be able to have. While in our country we are in the process of road mapping the creative sector in the short, medium, and long term, I think we also need to be able to roadmap for the ASEAN in the short, medium, and long term, and see which are our cultural comparative advantages, which countries are excelling in a particular sector, and which ones are sort of lagging behind, so that we can be more data-driven and also strategic about developing the overall ASEAN creative economy. So I hope that discussions on this topic will be had in these forums, in these higher level forums, and I hope our heads of state can actually have conversations about the regional creative economy of ASEAN. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Christopher. This is very valid. First of all, before we can proceed with anything, we need to do a mapping and baseline. Before we can forecast how to move forward. So that all has to be done. So I'm sure with the Cambodian chairmanship, So we will be looking forward for Cambodia to invite all of us for a very good session later, productive session. So thank you so much. This has been a very great Q&A session and discussion. I hope it opens some of our mind and I have more ideas on how to drive our own industry in each of the AMS. So I would like to now to invite again Mr. Jonathan Tan to give a closing remark. But because before that, I would like to mention what is Jonathan doing in ASEC. Jonathan. So Jonathan's portfolio is to support regional cooperation in the arts and culture, as well as information and media sectors. So the division also heads and coordinates the ASEAN Culture of Prevention initiatives. So for that, I would like to invite again my fellow buddies, I will just say ASEC, to give a closing remark. The floor is yours, Jonathan.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Dr. Yang. If I may just bring up the slides first. I would take this opportunity for the closing remarks to share with you on recent developments in ASEAN's efforts to promote and develop the creative economy, and conclude by offering some suggestions on what we could do together, especially with our long-standing partner, ROK, to develop the creative sector. Okay. So let me begin by sharing with you recent ASEAN developments on this front. Just a fortnight ago, Indonesia organized 2 key events. I think our panel speakers have also alluded to the ASEAN Creative Economy Business Forum, where creative makers in the region were gathered to exchange ideas. And we also have had the ASEAN Regional Workshop on Creative Economy, which was convened for ASEAN officials to discuss the scope, challenges, and opportunities and ways to enhance regional cooperation to develop the ASEAN creative economy. As it is, the creative economy speaks to numerous policy areas, including culture and the arts, science and technology, education, tourism, and therefore it has to be positioned across the public policy spectrum. So at the regional level, while we recognize that there isn't a singular definition of what ASEAN creative economy may stand for, we can reach a common understanding and develop a common language for the definition and the scope of the ASEAN creative economy, treating it very much as a living and evolving concept. As such, what you see on the screen here is that we have teased out the key strategic elements that make up our attempt of an overarching definition of ASEAN creative economy. So they are namely about adding value, emanating from human creativity that promotes sustainable, equitable, and inclusive development, with its scopes covering intangible assets as well as tangible assets. Over the past years, we have also put in place a number of activities and initiatives. For example, as what you can see on the left of the screen, the ASEAN Small, Medium, and Medium-Sized Culture Enterprises Caravan, which is a week-long touring caravan consisting exhibitions, performance, lectures, and workshops, focusing on IPR and best practices. This took place in the Philippines 2 years ago, and we will also continue with this caravan in the coming years. Other events we have done include a recent collaboration with the Asian Development Bank Institute on a virtual policy dialogue, where we have received more than 100 submissions and shortlisted 20 substantive papers by academics and practitioners on different aspects of the creative economy, where we peer review and discuss it at a 3-day policy dialogue. At the ASEAN level, our senior officials for culture and the arts have been overseeing the long-standing ASEAN City of Culture initiative, which you see in the middle of the screen, that celebrates creativity at its core. More recently, under the leadership of Cambodia, the culture officials in ASEAN are also discussing ministerial declaration to better promote and develop the creative economy, and discussing the idea about setting up a regional center to promote research and development, networking, capacity building for the creative and cultural industries. With our partner ROK, ASEAN and ROK have been working together to promote culture and the arts, including several initiatives that utilize digital technology for the creative and the cultural sector. Moving on, if I can show you in the next slide that we have a key initiative with ROK, which is this UNESCO World Heritage of ASEAN. It's a multi-year project that aims to create video content in the format of 360 virtual reality, showcasing the UNESCO sites in ASEAN member states. So far, we have captured the sites of 10 locations, including the Angkor Wat in Cambodia, Borobudur Temple in Indonesia, and the complex of Hue monuments in Vietnam. Once finalized, this would offer visitors an immersive 3D experience to take in these beautiful sites up close. Given the digital pivot, as what I also mentioned previously earlier, ASEAN has set in place various other digital initiatives that you can see here on the screen. So feel free to scan the QR codes here to look at them. But briefly, we have been digitally archiving the cultural artifacts, both intangible and tangible, in the ASEAN Cultural Heritage Digital Archive, where more than 170 artifacts can be viewed in 3 dimensions up close. Let me just conclude by outlining some suggestions for future collaborations, especially with our dialogue partners, including the Republic of Korea. As what I mentioned earlier, ROK is a soft power second to none, arguably in this part of the world, where we know that the culture and creative exports of K-pop, K-dramas, K-cosmetics, they are known globally and have a large following in the ASEAN region. So looking ahead, we hope that we can leverage the digital waves to support the development and promotion of the creative economy, especially in areas related to digital content production. And what I think His Excellency Sion has mentioned earlier is this idea about having a dedicated one-stop digital regional platform that we may want to put in place to facilitate marketplace of ideas and at the same time serve as a virtual directory showcasing creative and cultural goods and services. At the policy level, we think that it will be useful for us to gather policymakers and industry practitioners to exchange ideas with our ROK counterparts, especially in finding ways to develop the cultural and creative industries and how they can better contribute to the wider creative economy at the regional level. Last but not least, we think that at the back end, it's very important that we also think about the development of a regional database to better map the creative and cultural landscape. And it's very important that we not only look at it really from the capturing the data in terms of the economic output, but really measuring the impact of the social cultural spillovers. And I think that's where we want to look at it as the creative economy as an enabling role in terms of promoting inclusive and sustainable development. So to my final slide, I would say that the work ahead is cut out for ASEAN to better promote and develop the creative economy. As I mentioned earlier, one of our strong fundamentals is that we have the diverse cultures and creativity and ingenuity that will position ASEAN at a comparative advantage. If we are able to harness this unity and diversity, we can certainly better amplify ASEAN creative economy as not only a collective destination of creativity, but one of celebrating diversity and building a world of greater understanding and tolerance, especially through the creative expressions of arts and artists, serving as a pathfinder in the world of growing cultural pessimism. So if you'd like to know more about the developments in the creative economy, I would like to invite you to also take the QR code here and visit and read out the latest issue of the ASEAN magazine, which we just released 2 days ago. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you everyone for still staying with us. And there is a very comprehensive plan, and please try to download and read the magazines. It's very useful. I have already read it yesterday. So that marks the end of the moderated session. So I will also like to remind you to keep an eye for Connect ASEAN program that we have laid full for you next year. So join us in more Connect ASEAN programs in 2022. So I will give it back to the MC, Ben. The floor back to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yang, and thank you for relieving me of my moderating duties, especially after I almost thought I'd have to do them again earlier on. Thank you so much to our speakers for sharing their insight and expertise with us today. It was really a great pleasure, and of course, everyone's time is precious, so thank you for sticking with us through the entire session. I would like to take this moment to especially thank the Republic of Korea and the ASEAN Korea Cooperation Fund for their ongoing support of Connect ASEAN. And I'd also like to express my gratitude to the ASEAN Foundation, the staff of the ASEAN Foundation, the ASEAN Secretariat, and the ASEAN Senior Officials Meeting for Culture and Arts, or SOMCA, for their guidance and support for this forum. And last but not least, thank you all, everyone, the audience, for joining us today and sharing your time with us. And now for those of you who are waiting for the certificate details, now is the moment you've been waiting for. A survey link will be distributed by the organizer and in the live video chat. And as long as you fill it out completely, the organizers will send you your certificate within a month to the email you provided us with. So with that, good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are, or wherever you may be. And thank you so much for joining us.